This is If My People Bible Reading, Part 184. We are in the book of Thessalonians, and it was written about 52, 53 AD by Paul, one of his earliest that he was able to get out. And he was with Silas, and he was with Timothy, Barnabas, and for a while. There was a kind of a split between Thessalonians 1 and 2. Each were in their own direction for a while. Paul wrote Thessalonians because mainly it was the scattered tribes. It was not the scattered Jews. Those that knew that they were Jews were still in the Jewish understanding of the Torah. They had not come to the understanding of Yeshua. And so was Paul highly successful with the people of Judah in uh, Thessalonica. This is Macedonia. We're in Greece area now. The answer is no. Is that the reason he was sent? Is that the reason he spent 3 years with Yeshua down in Mount Ebal, which is the mountain where Moses received his 10 commandments? That's where Paul was. When he came back, and he was ready to go. He was sent to the scattered tribes, the Gentiles, the gents. And within those peoples, all peoples of the earth, they were all mixing back and forth. That's one thing about being scattered. You're going to mix. He was very quite pleased with their putting away idols that the other people had been playing with. So First Thessalonians is pretty good. Now, the bad part about this is that First Thessalonians and Second Thessalonians is repeated often by the Christian church leaders to their congregation because back in the late 1820s, 1830s, and 1820s, it would be around 1826 to 28, Pastor John Darby somehow had picked up some information, and there was a Margaret MacDonald that was involved. And this is the rapture understanding, the pre-trib rapture of believers up into heaven, not in tribulation, and not post-tribulation, and not millennial, into heaven. Where they were live and reign with Yeshua. Uh, they've got that totally wrong. The promise of Yeshua's return is to establish the millennium, and when his second advent, when his second coming, there's going to be a time on earth for a millennium. Now, that millennium doesn't mean that everybody on earth is going to heaven. So John Darby and Margaret MacDonald and countless pastors have been pushing this down the pulpits, and they used First Thessalonians and Second Thessalonians, and we'll go through this. I see and I know, and I was brought up and told by them and quoted by them, but now when you put this all together, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And Paul ends up writing Second Thessalonians to help explain this even more. So it kind of puts you in, you understand it at the end, and then there's others who I would say this is a great majority of the sheep don't get it because they like the easy road. Wouldn't you like the easy road? Say, you have to pick up your cross and follow me, Yeshua says, but you don't have to worry about anything, no responsibility, not being under law, and not having to suffer from the Antichrist. And especially, they never mentioned the wrath of Yahweh. Whereas this is mentioned in almost every book, all 16 prophets that we've gone through, the book of Ezekiel, the warnings to all the patriarchs, and the book of Daniel, the book of Isaiah, all mention the wrath of Yahweh. And when we get through this, the hope and the hope in the return of Yeshua is the hope of the return. And that doesn't mean that you're guaranteed that he's going to come during your time. This is one of the things that Paul had to deal with. He was telling them of the comfort of the return of Christ, not just the wrath of Yahweh, but the return of Yeshua, their Savior. That's what comes out of 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. So, with that in mind, he is very pleased with their behavior and how they come to an understanding, and they put their idols and throw their junk idols away. And we won't get back into that idol worship too much until we get to Acts 19. When we get to Acts 19, it's going to become stunningly obvious that most all the churches in the world teach that we are in the church age right now, and that at this time, at Yeshua's death and having risen to his Father, the church age began. Well, the church age began back in Genesis, but okay, I'm not going to argue with them. But they quote Acts 19. The problem with that is in the understanding that there's people that are upset with the apostles and Paul and all that because they're losing profit from selling false idols, little statues and terracottas and all kinds of. Their business is getting hurt by Yeshua because you don't have to have an idol to have a faith in the Almighty Father, Abba, through Yeshua. You don't have to have, and you are commanded not to have any idols whatsoever. And so, does that sound familiar to a Catholic church that sells idols and gives them away to you so you can put the little plastic things on your dash of your car and nobody will run into you? And then all these saints and all these things you wear on your chains and all the saints you pray to and praying to Mary, praying to everybody but Jesus, Yeshua, doing the exact opposite. So if anything, chapter 19 of Acts, when we get to it, demonstrates the fake churches that exist today that have totally confounded the Christian sheep. Let's get into some Torah. I like this Torah stuff. We are in chapter 4, and Paul starts talking Torah right from it. Verse 1, finally, brothers, we've instructed you how to live in order to please Elohim, as in fact you are living. He's happy. Now we ask you and urge you in Master Yeshua, your Bibles may say Lord. Once again, Lord didn't exist till the 16th century. To do this more and more. Verse 4, that each of you should learn to control your own body in a way that is kadosh, honorable. Verse 5, not passionate, just lust like the heathen who do not know Elohim. And in this matter, no one should do wrong his brother, take advantage of him. Yahweh will punish men for all such sins as we have already told you and warned you. Verse 10, and in fact, you do love all your brothers throughout Macedonia. Yet we urge you, brothers, to do more and more. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, to work with your hands, just as we told you. Isn't that easy Torah to learn? Isn't that easy? So that sounds like going through the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts. All these oaths you have to take. It's right out of it. Chapter 5, verse 6. So then, let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be alert and self-controlled. We are to be a watchtower. And that means that in the old days, in a watchtower, there was somebody on the watchtower. And then there was about 100 feet away or 50 feet away, another guy on a watchtower, and another guy. That's why, so that the other people in the entire city, the great majority of the people, could have a restful night of sleep. We take care of our sheep. That's one of the commandments from Yeshua. Feed my sheep, Peter. Feed my sheep. He said that, I think, 2 or 3 times to him. Verse 11, therefore encourage one another to build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. In other words, he's pretty happy with them. This is 1 Thessalonians. He's quite happy with them. Verse 12, now we ask you, brothers, to respect those who work hard among you, who are over you in our master and who instruct you. Respect them. Hold them in the highest regard and love because of their work. Live in peace with each other, and we urge you, brothers, warn those who are idle, encourage the timid, help the weak, be patient with everyone. Wow. Make sure that nobody, verse 15, make sure nobody pays back wrong for wrong, but always try to be kind with each other and to everyone else. Be joyful always. Pray continually. Now, joyful in verse 16 means joyful. It doesn't mean be happy or just absolutely laughing at everything. You can be joyful at a funeral for a family member. You can be joyful because they're at peace, and that's a joyful thing. Although you're crying, and that's still supposed to be a joyful thing. 18. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is Elohim's will for you in Messiah Yeshua. Do not put out the Ruach's fire. Do not treat prophecies with contempt. If something's prophecy, like reading the Bible is prophecy. So you can read prophecy 100% of the time and be 100% correct. I wouldn't go around telling people you're a prophet, because as soon as your mouth opens saying something that's not right out of the Bible, then you look like a jerk. You don't look like a prophet, do you? I've met only two people in my life who carried business cards. One was a man and one was a woman. It said prophet on their card. Christian Prophet Service, and they charged for it. Okay. Verse 21. Test everything. Now, have I not told you that? This is like 180 some odd of these I've given out. Test everything and rightfully divide every word that I say. Test it out. Test everything. Hold on to what is good. Now, what does that mean in 1st and 2nd Timothy? It means rightfully divide. That's what it means. Verse 22. Avoid every kind of evil. I made a comment in here for verse 28. The grace of our Master Yeshua Messiah be with you. And verse 27 it was, I charge you before Master to have this letter read to all the brothers. And then I said, Paul found that many of those along his path did not argue over there being a God or Elohim in this world versus no God at all. Just as today, all false religions and even up to 67% of the Christian denominations do not accept, this is Christian, do not accept that Yeshua is the only Son of Yahweh, the only begotten Son. Amazing. And that's in their doctrines now. Wow. And for this reason, the apostles went to their death in apologetics, defending the word apologetics, that Yeshua is the only way to Yahweh. These people had been with him for about 3 weeks because he was with them for 3 Shabbats, and yet he was giving them this deep stuff already, and they were sucking it up like crazy and reading all these letters. And yet there have been many churches that many of other people I've talked to, including myself, have gone to, and they've been in Bible school and Sunday school and church their entire life. They're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. One of them that I remember was 90 some odd years old and said that they didn't understand who Yeshua was. Are you kidding me? Now that we're reading this to you, reading Torah, God's, Yahweh's, Abba Father's instructions directly to you that his Son spoke and written down by all these people into the Bible. Is it easier to understand what we just talked about there? Because, I mean, I remembered a bunch of this stuff, and I was only like 10 years old or 8 years old when I was in the Weblos or something. I had to learn all these things to be a scout. Not Sunday school, church, nothing to do with that. And they didn't give this Jesus down your throat when you were in Cub Scouts. They just read this book, You have to memorize all this, and when we ask the questions, you have to respond to it. See you at Second Thessalonians.